The whole thesis stands on one central beam. The world is not breaking into truly separate camps. It is being driven through controlled conflict toward a new system, and the wars are the engines of transition. That is the heart of it. Everything else branches from there. The first thing the idea gets right is that Iran should not be read as an isolated piece on the board. In this frame, Iran is a hinge state. It sits near energy arteries, shipping choke points, ideological fault lines, and great power trade routes. If America is forced to pour attention, weapons, naval posture, and political capital there, then China and Russia gain room elsewhere, not because they must love every move Tehran makes, but because Iran functions as a pressure multiplier against the Atlantic system. In plain terms, one fire in that region can pin down far more enemy bandwidth than the size of the country alone would suggest. The second piece of the thesis is the dual proxy structure. The argument says there are really two connected war systems running at once. The first is the brother war in Ukraine, where Russia is being ground down while Europe is being militarized, economically reordered, and tied deeper into permanent security logic. The second is the Iran lane, where America and its allied structure are being pulled into a hot arc touching the Gulf, Red Sea, Eastern Mediterranean, intelligence networks, and energy pricing. If you read those two fronts together, instead of separately, the picture changes. They stop looking like random crises and start looking like a distributed attrition map against the old order. That is where the idea gets its force. It says the battlefield is not just where bombs fall. The battlefield is also energy, debt, shipping, food, data, public fear, censorship, and industrial policy. The wars are not only killing people, they are reorganizing systems. Now the deeper move in the thesis is the claim of false multipolarity. That is the most important part to understand. The idea is not simply East versus West. It is apparent rivals can still serve the same civilizational outcome. That is a very different claim. In that frame, one bloc pushes war, another bloc pushes response. Both sides justify more surveillance, more AI, more digital control, more speech policing, more centralized financial rails, more supply chain management, more border hardening, more emergency rule, and more dependence on machine systems. So even if the flags differ, the social destination can converge. That is the real point. The thesis is saying the rivalry may be real at one level, but the harvest is shared. That is why the line about a digital order matters. The idea is not really about who wins this week's conflict. It is about what kind of civilization is built out of repeated emergency. War is the furnace. Out of that furnace come the same patterns over and over. Biometric normalization, digital identity pressure, AI-assisted targeting, machine-mediated information control, financial monitoring, and a public trained to accept permanent exceptional measures as ordinary life. The claim is that the wars are not side effects of transition. They are the transition mechanism. Now let me sharpen it, because Zen does not just repeat a thesis, he tests it. Where the idea is strongest is in seeing that modern war is no longer only about territory. It is about systems management. That part is dead on. It is also strong in seeing that proxy wars can be linked, even when the public is taught to view them as separate headlines. And it is strong in noticing that rival elites can still benefit from the same architecture of fear and control even while fighting over rank inside that architecture. But where the idea can become sloppy is when it turns every layer of conflict into one perfectly synchronized puppet show. That is too neat. Real power struggles are messier than that. Nations do have real interests. Factions do clash. Militaries, financiers, ideologues, intelligent structures, industrial blocs, and civilizational actors do not always move as one seamless mind. Sometimes they are coordinating. Sometimes they are converging without coordination. Sometimes they are competing inside the same machine. That distinction matters. The stronger version of the thesis is not every side is fake. The stronger version is many sides are real, but their conflict can still feed the same larger enclosure. That is the tougher and more serious formulation. So if I were refining the idea into a harder commander doctrine, it would sound like this. The world is moving through a managed breakdown in which regional wars, economic stress, information control, and technological integration are not separate phenomena. They are overlapping instruments of reorganization. The major powers are not identical, and their ambitions are real, but their struggle is producing the same broad civilizational outputs: more centralization, more machine.